As usual, let's recap. Okay, let's review quickly what we learned and discussed last week. Okay, last week we carried out a theory test and theory application with the mainstream theoretical perspectives in the field of international relations with a focus on East Asian international politics, in particular in the case of the future relationships between Washington and Beijing. Remember, right? 다 기억하죠? So we did read Adam Friedberg's paper entitled "The Future of U.S.-China Relations is Conflict Inevitable." The title is quite catchy, right? Is conflict inevitable or not? And Bina and Alexis, thank you for giving us a great presentation about this important topic, right, on the future relationship between Washington and China, right? And these are the 4 questions that you actually took and discussed last week, right? The first, how do mainstream IL theories such as realism, liberalism, and constructivism predict? How do they make predictions? Well, what kinds of what predictions do they make regarding the future of U.S.-China relations? That's the first question that you discussed. And obviously, different theories make different explanations and predictions. And which one among them do you think is most satisfying? Or is there any different or more innovative way of understanding and predicting the future relationships between these two countries? And also, we try to make our own predictions. In this case, about the future relationship between Seoul and Tokyo, between South Korea and Japan, based on mainstream IL theories, including realism, liberalism, and constructivism, in the same way that Adam Friedberg did. And finally, we discussed the question whether we think mainstream IL theories are satisfactory or not in understanding international politics of East Asia, right? Including the relationships between United States and China, right? So as far as I'm concerned, we had very interesting discussion. Why are you laughing? 왜 웃어? 퍼져서? 이것 때문에? 그래, 이거 닫아야겠다. 미안해. 이게 하다 보니까 잘 안 들리더라고. 그래서 일부러 좀 크게 얘기하는 거야. 그래서 나도 사실 힘들어요, 이것 때문에. 이거 왜 하는지 몰라, 도대체. 이놈의 학교 진짜. 다 녹음됐겠다. 이거 알지? 하는 이유도 다 있어요. 이제 중요한 이유로 we are doing this, right? We are recording this class. But anyway, there are always pros and cons involved in any activities, including recording this class, I think. Okay, getting back to the point. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, like I said, we had a very interesting discussions last week, right? And we had sort of a consensus, right, last week, especially regarding question number 3, right? The future of U.S., South Korea and Japan relations. You guys the majority of you guys made very negative or pessimistic predictions about the future relationships between Japan and South Korea, right? So it was quite surprising to me, to be honest with you, because I sort of expected that different predictions about our relationship with Japan would be made from you based on different theories, but most of the predictions made last week was very pessimistic, right? Pessimistic. That's fine, because first nobody can be so sure. Nobody knows how the relationship between these two countries, South Korea and Japan, would evolve, right, in the future. Nobody could be 100% sure about that. And the second, the important point, or more important point, involving the activity of theory test or theory application is to learn the fact that we could make different, even conflicting predictions based on the single theory of international relations. That's the key point that I want you to remember, okay? And that's the key point that I would like to talk a little bit more about, all right? The same theory, different, even conflicting predictions, right? Conflicting predictions. That's the key, the single key point that you guys need to keep in mind regarding the last week's class meeting, right? The same theory, different prediction, even one theory, many predictions. Doesn't matter, right? So let's again recap. Okay, let's recap what we did actually in the classroom last week. So we try to understand and make predictions. 진짜 막 울리는구나 이게. Predictions about the future relationships between Japan and China, right? Based on these three mainstream theories of IR we've learned so far, namely realism, liberalism, and constructivism, right? More specifically, with realism, we focus on these three factors or variables, right? China's rising and Chinese intentional aims and security dilemma. Right? And with liberalism, we analyze economic interdependence, international institutions, and the level of democratization in China, right, as key variables. Right? And as for constructivism, we take Chinese identities and strategic cultures and international norms as, again, key variables, right, for constructivist understanding. Right? So based on these 6 key variables related to 왜 웃니 자꾸 너네? 뭐가 그렇게 웃기냐? 아 그래? 웅웅거리는구나. 왜 그러? 아 내 소리가 아니라? 아 이렇게? 그래? 오늘 왜 그러지? 그래. Stay focused. 야. 다 됐어? 뭐 괜찮아. 뭐 잘리기야 더 하겠어. 그래. 어쨌든 이 6개 variable로 6 variables related to the 3 mainstream IL theories respectively. We made, or Adam Friedberg makes these 2 different lines of predictions, right? Optimistic predictions as well as pessimistic predictions, right? So, like I said, traditionally, I mean, this could be a very useful way of understanding involved in the theoretical predictions, because traditionally, we often predict or make predictions based on realism that the future relationship between China and the United States would be very hostile, or something like, China cannot rise peacefully and the conflict is inevitable. These kind of statements or predictions are often made based on realist thinking, right? But we by now realize that we could also make the optimistic, very positive and optimistic predictions with the same realistic thinking, with the same variables, right? With realism based on the analysis of the China's rising power, the aim and security dilemma, we could also make optimistic prediction as well as pessimistic predictions. So this is Adam Friedberg's framework, okay, of optimism versus pessimism is a good way of understanding the dynamics involved in theoretical predictions as well as the empirical cases in itself, okay? But however, nevertheless, we do know that realism usually makes pessimistic prediction, pessimistic explanation. Liberalism refers to optimism, and constructivism refers to related to dualism, right? Depending on how we understand it, it could pessimistic, we could be pessimist, or we could be optimist, right? So these are the typically accepted matchups of pairings in the field of IR, especially when it comes to understanding or predicting the relationships between Washington and Beijing, right? So realism makes pessimism predictions. That's a usual conventional way of understanding based on realist logic, right? So let me give you an example here. Let's take a look at this video clip. Okay, this is a talk given by John Mearsheimer, who is one of the core, hardcore realist or offensive realists. And he talks about China and argues that China cannot rise peacefully. That's a typical understanding of realist, right? Let me play it for you. 22분, 27분 59.
So my bottom line in my theoretical discussion is that the best way to survive in the international system is to, number one, be a regional hegemon, dominate your region of the globe, and two, make sure that nobody else dominates their region of the globe the way you dominate yours.
Yeah, a lot of dominate, right?
Those are the two goals.
So two goals. So he then applies these principal goals conjectured by the realist thinking to the case of China. Okay. 20.
Third part of my talk. How do you think China is likely to behave as it gets
How do you think China is likely to behave as it gets
more powerful?
more powerful?
Well, first of all, don't you think that China is going to want to be the most powerful state in Asia by far? If we work so hard to be the most powerful state in North America and in the Western Hemisphere more generally, don't you think they'll want to be the most powerful state in Asia? You don't think the Chinese remember what happened when they were weak? You don't think they remember what the Europeans, the Americans, and especially the Japanese did to them when they were weak? It was not pretty at all. And they fully understand what the consequences are of being weak. If you ask somebody from China which of these two choices they'll take, one, you can be 20 times more powerful than Japan, or Japan can be twice as powerful as you. Which one do you take? This is not even a serious question. They want to be 20 times more powerful. They want to be 50 times more powerful than Japan for good security reasons. The best way to survive in the international system is to be really powerful relative to your neighbors, because then nobody screws around with you. You don't think this logic applies to China? It does, and they fully understand it. And they have every intention of making sure that they are really powerful. And I told you what the United States also did via the Monroe Doctrine is that it pushed the European powers out. You don't think the Chinese are going to want to have a Monroe Doctrine? You think the Chinese are going to be perfectly content having the United States Navy and the United States Air Force, the United States Army and the United States Marines right off their coast? You think they're going to be happy about that? Most of you are too young to remember the Cold War, but the United States of America used to go ballistic when the Soviets would do anything in Cuba. What are these people doing? This is our hemisphere. Who are they to come here? Monroe Doctrine. My mother taught me when I was a little boy. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. It's good for us to have a Monroe Doctrine. Probably good for them to have a Monroe Doctrine too. And there's all sorts of evidence today that the Chinese, would really kind of like to push the Americans away from their coastline.
그래, 우리 그룹 그 토론을 한번 해보도록 합시다. 그래서 차이점에 대해서 by now you fully understand the main differences between hey. I want to dance, of course, yeah, but first things first, right? First things first. Let's do this. Although I know you hate doing this, but we have to do what we have to do. Anyway, discussions. 정말 울리는구나. Discussions. So you know the main differences, right? 형원 알지 이제 그 individually 어떻게 취급되는지. The last part delivered by 우승 clearly demonstrate the difference between foreign policy analysis and the other, including functionalism or liberalism as well as realism, when it comes to understanding, when it comes to how to understand individual decision makers. You know, the rationality is a sort of like a given reality, is a basic assumption for the other theoretical perspectives, whereas foreign policy analysis takes rationality not as a given premise. Okay, it is more like foreign policy analysis believes that humans do not necessarily behave in a rational manner. Sometimes they do irrational behavior. That's the starting point. But if we believe that all humans are rational, then we will increase our power according to realism. We will cooperate with other states in order to make economic benefits from the interdependent relationship, from the perspective of liberalism and so on and so forth. But that premise, taken by the other theoretical perspectives, is denied by foreign policy analysis scholarship. That's the key, one of the key differences between liberalism, including functionalism, and foreign policy analysis scholarship. So with that in mind, let's do this. 4 questions. First, what are the 왜 이렇게 울려 이거? 오늘 왜 이러는 거야? 왜 이러는 걸까? What are the core arguments of foreign policy analysis scholarship, and do you agree with foreign policy analysis? Okay, core arguments. Although Dahyun and Usung gave a talk on foreign policy analysis in a broad manner, all right? Foreign policy analysis scholarship deals with a variety of issues, including different levels of analysis. But the core, okay, the core arguments or the key levels of analysis for foreign policy analysis scholarship, okay? So think about it. And do you agree? I mean, just take an example of the levels of analysis framework here, okay? We have usually 3 different levels of analysis framework. 진솔, 맞죠? 그래. But here, foreign policy analysis scholarship places its analytical emphasis on one particular level, which is 진솔, which is 뭐야? International system level, domestic level, and individual level. But among them, foreign policy analysis scholarship focuses on individual levels of analysis, right? So do you agree with the explanatory utility of foreign policy analysis scholarship or not, okay? And second question is the main differences. The one major difference between them, I already explained to you, right? Pointed out the one major difference between FPA and the mainstream theories, realism, liberalism, and what else? What else? You know, there are some other major differences between these two approaches. And third question is quite important. Okay, so I want you to focus on question number 3. Okay, to what extent are individual policymakers such as presidents or prime ministers or bureaucratic agencies such as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs important in influencing a state foreign policy behavior? Yeah? We sort of assume, right? Sort of assume that they are very important. You know, president or prime ministers, right? Or ministers of foreign affairs or ministers of defense, you know, will play a very important role in making and implementing choices and decisions for their respective nation states. But how important and to what extent? In other words, under what circumstances or in what situations do they play particularly significant roles? So give me some specific or concrete examples. You know, under what circumstances are they important? Yeah, that's the key question. We know they are important, but under what? In what situations? Are they more important? They play more important role than other times. And finally, so relatedly, okay, the question number 4 is closely related to question number 3, okay? So are policymakers, individual policymakers, free agents, okay, free actors of international politics or diplomacy, okay? Obviously, they are not. Obviously, they are not. I'm pretty sure you understand they are not free agents, free actors of international relations or diplomacy. Then think about the constraints, different types of constraints, or what constraints are put in place, placed on the individual policymakers. Okay, there could be lots of different kinds of constraints, right? Placed on, for example, president. Even we believe that president solely makes foreign policy decisions, but lots of constraints, right? So question number 3 and 4 are closely related to each other, as you can see here. So let's do this. 이야기를 한번 지금까지 나눴던 토론 내용에 대해서 이야기를 서로 한번 해봅시다. Okay. Okay. Question number 1. The core assumptions or arguments underlining foreign policy analysis scholarship. Okay. 뭘까요? 아주 간단하게 뭐 어렵진 않지. Core assumptions and arguments of foreign policy analysis scholarship. 누가 얘기해 볼까? 재현이가? 아니요야? 그래? 그러면은 누가 얘기해 볼까? 민혁이가? 누가 얘기해 볼까요? The core arguments or assumptions of foreign policy analysis scholarship. Okay. The answers to this question is, of course, related to question number 2. 그렇지? 고개를 심하게 끄덕였던 우리 유진, 이거 한번 그럼 얘기해 볼까? 뭘까요? 뭐 여러 개가 있겠지만 하나만. The one of the core arguments or assumptions. Actors in the state. In other words, what's going on within the state rather than what's going on outside the states is of great importance to foreign policy analysis scholarship. That's the one of the key points of foreign. Okay, 민혁, 좋았어. Okay, very good. Rationality, different understandings or treatments of the notion of rationality of human beings, right? Including individual human policymakers, obviously, right? So rationality, 또 뭐가 있을까요? So as 민혁 rightly pointed out, foreign policy analysis scholarship does not take rationality, the notion of the concept of rationality of individual decision makers, a natural thing. Okay, it's not a starting premise under which their arguments are based, right? So different understandings of rationality. Humans are not always rational. 또 뭐가 있을까요? 아까 얘기한 우리 유진이가 얘기한 domestic politics, rationality, okay, or irrationality, or according to Simon, it is often called bounded rationality. Bounded rationality. Okay. 그러니까 제한된 거죠. 우리가 당연히 rational하지만 항상 not always. Therefore, we maintain bounded rationality. 뭐 이런 얘기도 많이 하는 거죠. 그래서 그러면 관련해서 relatedly, question number 2, the main differences between FPA and mainstream IR theory, realism, such as realism. 뭐가 있을까요? Mainstream differences. Good. So different understandings of actors or actors' rationality. Therefore, for example, realism believes that states, as opposed to human beings, right, as a key actor of international relations, right, international relations. Whereas foreign policy analysis scholarship focuses on, for example, what's going on within the mind of human individual decision maker, within the head of the decision makers. But based on the realist logic or the rational choice theory or rationality, we don't have to look into, for example, the beliefs held by individual decision makers, precisely because all individuals think in the same way, defined in terms of power, security, survival, and so on and so forth, in the realist thinking. 또 어떤 differences 있을까요? For example, in terms of the levels of analysis framework, as I said, right? 또 what else? 진솔? 몰라? 없어? 성현? 그냥 웃지요. 어, all of the differences already been addressed. Okay, the main differences. 또 뭐 없을까? 우리가? Level of actors. Level of actors. What do you mean by that?
I think that the choice of vocabulary was quite wrong, but
음,
in case that in case of FPA,
음,
they think they try to think they try to focus on the individual interests, like the individual policymakers, like what do they intend to do, what do they intend to do, not according to the national interest, but focusing on their own interest. But in case of realism or liberalism, like the other mainstream theories, they do not keep much importance on. They do not keep that much importance on the individuals. Like,
that's right.
as according to they think based on states or international institutions. All those things are kind of groups, not individuals. And that's the main difference.
So that's why sometimes we call FPA as methodological individualism. Okay, methodological individualism as opposed to methodological holism. Okay, so since FPA regards individual policymakers as the key actor of international relations, including diplomacy or diplomatic relations, a variety of factors and variables could be regarded as very important factors. As long as they could affect or influence individual decision makers, they should be taken as critical variables or factors influencing international relations or international politics according to foreign policy analysis scholarship. That's why as compared with the other mainstream theoretical perspectives, foreign policy analysis framework or foreign policy analysis scholarship is tend to be very complex or tend to have more complicated theoretical or analytical approach because they believe that lots of factors could affect individual decision makers and individuals do not think in the same way. So we have to, based on that logic, we have to examine a variety of factors and variables that could affect individuals. That's why, right, multiple or multi-level, multifactorial, multivariable analytical approach is preferred rather than parsimonious, rather than simplistic theoretical analytical approach preferred by mainstream theories such as realism, liberalism. Then the question becomes to what extent, the extent to which individuals or individual policymakers, their influences, So how much are they important, or how much do they play important roles in making and implementing states' foreign policy and security policy for that matter? And under what circumstances or in what situations do they play particularly significant roles? Give me some examples. Okay. So I have talked about these questions with group C였나요, 여기가? B with those students, including 형원, 뭐가 있을까요? Under what circumstances? Like I said, we believe that we know intuitively. Okay, we know that they are important. But to what extent, or under what circumstances are they important, particularly? 아까 얘기했었죠, 우리 여기서 몇 가지에 대해서. 누가 얘기해볼까? 네? 우승인과 다현이가 얘기를 발표도 했으니 누가 한번 얘기해볼까 그러면? 그래, 그렇게 이제 막 권위로 눌러 제끼는 거 내가 되게 싫어하거든. 우승이가 한번 얘기해볼까? 언제? Under what circumstances do they play particularly important roles in influencing international relations?
아무래도 민주주의 국가에서는
그렇지.
선거를 신경 쓰지 않을 수 없을 텐데 일반하는 사람들이 그렇기 때문에 민주 국가에서 선거층의 지지를 받기 위해서 그들의 여론을 신경 쓰고 그들의 이익이 제한 요건이 될 수 있다.
그렇지. 그렇지. So different type of regime or political system is and should be key issue or factor here, right? Regarding question number 3. So, for example, under democratic state, decision makers should be or are more likely to be attentive or sensitive to public opinion, for example, and the media, as compared with social or communist or authoritarian regime, right? Because of the re-election, they are always concerned about re-election. So, by comparison, democratic states decision individual policymakers, their influences are less than those of policymakers in authoritarian states. 맞죠? 또 뭐가 있을까? What else? 어떤 우리가 비교할 수 있겠지. 뭐가 있을까 또? Democratic states versus authoritarian state. And 또 뭐가 있을까? 영국?
Their highest policymakers unrational people, like dictatorship, such as Hitler or Kim Jong-un. If they are rational people, don't choose that foreign policy.
Irrational? Okay. So depending on the personalities, you mean? 맞아요? 그 얘기하는 거. 어떤 성격에 따라서 달라질 수 있다는 걸 얘기하는 거죠. 맞아요? Hitler or Kim Jong-un or specific type of leader, maybe. Type of leader. Okay. Or leadership that I talked about before, right? So 정책
그러니까 정책 결정이
달라진다. 뭐에 따라서?
국제의 경우에는 이게 그 민주적인 결과물이 아니기 때문에
그렇지.
그 리더가 비이성적이라면 비이성적인 결과가
그렇지. 나 가능성이 더 높다라고 한 거죠. 그래서 아까 여기서 잠깐 얘기한 것처럼, it is more likely for authoritarian regimes to make irrational, decisions or choices. Or shall I say the more authoritative, decisions, not being highly constrained by public opinion, as compared with democratic states. That's very obvious, right? That's very obvious. So Yonguk just pointed out, gave me the Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, and Hitler, the Nazi German leader. So if we take that example, then the individuals certainly do not behave in rational manner, right? 민혁.
If the public has
then the policy is like policy leader will have big influence on the policy because like for instance for the FTA between America and Korea, they had argument between choosing agriculture or the manufacturing this part. So which would you take more strength? Well, they were fighting against each other, and the policymaker had to decide if you decided to make the FTA, then you will be choosing the manufacturing area. And if you choose not to have FTA, then you're having more value on agricultural part for the domestic market. So in that case, if the public is has split it into multiple choices, then the policy maker would have the most influence power.
That's right. Or quite might be the opposite might be the case, but the point here is that the public opinion or the whether the public has a largely share the same or similar attitude regarding the specific issues, then policymakers, then that will certainly affect individual policymaker, president or prime minister's decisions and choices, right? 오케이. 또 뭐가 있을까요? 또 재밌는 거. 성현 다음에 우리 형원이하고.
I agree the democratization. But even if the society is democratic, there is an exception way to observe or check or curb the power and refrain the power from being too much centralized. Individuals or their idea would be important. That's what we have.
Good. Very good point.
We have current case that it's not a foreign policy, but I think looking over current government issued textbook gives us insight about government or individuals' decision-making process. So it's according to the public opinion research shows that more than half of Korean people are opposed to the textbook. But you can see the government is still keep pushing forward this policy. Part keeps claiming that we need this textbook, we need the right history. But so in this case, individual and like agencies of government are more important than other factors. People's opinion. Right?
Very good point. Very good point. So even in a democratic states, the influence of individual decision makers would vary substantially depending on first whether public opinion is divided or not, and second whether the policymakers, say the president or prime minister, has the authoritative leadership or more open-minded leadership. So depending on different types of leadership, right? The influence of policymakers, key policymakers, would be varying substantially. 또 뭐가 있을까요? 아까 형원 손 들었었지. 그래서 first the types of leadership, and second types of regime type, leadership type. 였었죠. 이렇게 나왔나 우리가 지금? And public opinion.
Your mechanism of the decision making.
Very good point. Very good point. So once again, as we talk, depending on how powerful our nation states are in terms of material capability, right? The difference, the influence of decision makers again would be varying, right? So if we, for example, as Hyungwon pointed out, if we have to concern about our survival because of the lack of material capability relative to surrounding nations, then the first priority comes survival, right? Survival. So, regardless who governs the nation, regardless who governs the nation. Security comes always first, before economy, before culture, before identity, before history matters, or before anything. Security and survival comes first. So that's, in that case, individuals do not play that much significant roles, right?
I think like in the case,
Very good point. Very good point. So, I mean, there is a, we are talking about a tendency rather than the definite characteristics about the how individual policymakers would behave, how individual states would behave in a certain, situations, even under the same geographical locations. Okay, but as you said, there are many different, there could be many different or more factors and issues that could affect the level of influence of the individual policymakers in making foreign and security policy and decisions and choices. But here again, there are many constraints. There could be several constraints placed on individual policymakers. That's the question number 4, right? So what kinds of constraints are there? What kinds of constraints do exist? Again, the answers might be varying depending on, the issues we just talked about. For example, when we talk about the democratic states, there are different kinds of constraints there, and as compared with authoritarian communist regimes, right? 뭐가 있을까요? 아까 다 비슷하게 얘기했지만 또 어떤 constraints? Norms, yes. Ideology, norms, ideology, 또 public opinion, public opinion norms. Norms, and what kinds of norms?
like
Human rights norms.
if a certain policymaker wants to make a policy that is against human rights, then facing disagreement, they would probably not follow, or the other countries will have some kind of actions. So there will be a kind of constraint.
Sure. So human rights norms or norms in general, right? Because like I said, even if we believe that human rights norms are important, the effects of human rights norms would be very different when we, for example, when we try to apply to North Korea and to South Korea, right? And human rights norm is not totally, but almost totally ignored in the North, right? Even if we believe in human rights. So again, depending on what types of regime we are talking about, right? So influence, again, influence, the individual policymakers would be different, and different constraints would be placed on them, right? So 뭐가 있을까요? The norms, ideology, public opinion, 또 뭐가 있을까? 굉장히 큰, big or great constraints 뭐가 있을까요? 그렇지. 매스 미디어 하나 나왔죠. 매스 미디어, okay. Especially in democratic states, shall we say, right? Mass media.
Personal relationship of the policymakers with other bureaucrats or other policymakers can be also kind of constraints.
Yes, bureaucrats, or how to say, bureaucratic culture. And there is a thing like bureaucratic organization culture. 조직 논리라고 우리가 하는 이른바 in Korean 조직 논리 이런 게 있는 거죠 또 우리가. So which is related to so-called group thinking. 우리가 group thinking이라고 하는 게 있죠. 우리가 individual thinking이 있다면 group thinking이라는 게 또 있는 거죠. Based on organizational culture or procedures. Right? 우리가 follow 해야만 되는 조직 논리와 조직의 절차 같은 것들이 있지. 특히나 군대 같은 게 더 그런 경우이지. 그러니까 그럴 경우에는 당연히 인디비주얼보다는 조직의 논리가 앞설 수가 있고, 이게 또 어떤 조직이냐에 따라서 달라질 수가 있겠죠. 그게 뭐 우리가 국정원을 얘기하느냐 아니면 일반 사회의 조직을 얘기하느냐에 따라 또 달라질 수 있지만 조직의 논리, 그다음에 또 뭐가 있을까요? What else? Financial. Yes, correct. Yeah. Yes. 그렇지. 돈이 있어야 우리가 뭔가를 할 테니까, 그렇지? money.
The argument's over if the person walks in the room is like, I funded this so-called thing. I funded like 95% of this, so what the rest of you guys think does not matter.
그렇죠. 우리가 이제 버짓 프로블럼도 있을 수가 있죠. 파이낸스 버짓. 또 다양하게 있을 수가 생각을 막 해보라는 거지. 뭐가 있을 거냐. 아무거나 또 뭐 없어? 미디어, public opinion, ideology, norm, social norms, and money and finance. 또 뭐가 있어?
Military risk.
Military risk.
I guess I see like risk of confrontation, like risk of violent confrontation. Like,
Okay.
is this going to lead to? Because if in the end, that's a big issue that brings all the other issues together. Because if this leads to war, war brings on hundreds of other things. It messes with public opinion. It messes with norms. It messes with financials. I feel like that would be a big one. Because if they confront each other, then like 6 other constraints come back to join.
Good. Good. 또 막 얘기해봐. 뭐 없어 또? Good point. International institution, yeah, might be one. Yeah, might be one that could affect as a constraint policymakers. International institution, yes, institution. Historical relations, yes, or historically constructed. Yeah, more ideas, something like that. Because we are all actors of the society, the same society. Societies share the similar historical memories and conceptions. 또 history, 다연회, 뭐? 머리야. 기다리고 있어. 대답하려고 한 거 아니었어? Nature resources, yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, nature resources. So basically, very many, 굉장히 많다는 거지. we often believe that it is the president decision. It is a prime minister's decision. So it is president's choices, whatever. But in reality, that's not the case. That's not the case, right? Even a president or prime ministers are under strong challenge and pressure from the public, from the media, from the history, from the perspective of money and finance and the conflict and so on and so forth. That's why foreign policy analysis scholarship would like to examine in detail the individuals and the surroundings of individuals. Okay. So one of the key points that I would like to talk before I let you go home is this: the key level or unit of analysis taken by foreign policy analysis scholarship. We know by now, right? Which is yes, individual human beings. So as compare with the mainstream IL theories, foreign policy analysis scholarship certainly place its great emphasis on individual human beings, how we think, how we behave, how we interact with one another. So assumption behind this approach, okay, FPA, is this. So the source of all international politics and change in international politics is specific human beings using their agency and acting individually or in groups. And human decision makers do not necessarily act rationally. Okay? Do not necessarily act rationally. But again, mainstream IL theories, including realism and liberalism, to some extent constructivism, believe that humans are rational actors. That's why they do not take individual decision makers seriously, or at least not as serious as FPA scholarship does, right? So they focus on specific actors, mainly state governments and their leaders who make choices. And also they focus on the processes by which such choices are made, governmental decision-making processes or mechanism, right? So basically, they would like to examine and look into what is going on within the state or within the government, as whereas the mainstream ignore, right, what's going on within the government or within the state, while focusing on what's going on outside the state, such as the balance of power, the distribution of power, and the level of economic interdependence, or whether international institutions are proliferating or not, and whether there is a strong international norm that could constrain individual policymakers of a certain states, because they believe that the factors belong to international system level are more important and more crucial, more significant than the factors belong to individual or domestic level. 이게 바로 사실은 뭐 거의 핵심이죠. 다 우리가 알고 있지만 여기에서 starting with this assumption and premise, there could be different theories. As a matter of fact, for example, cognitive consistent theory, which I will explain next time. Okay, so psychological or cognitive approaches to the study of international relations is often preferred and taken and employed by FPA scholars because they believe that individuals are different. They behave differently. They think differently. They think the same thing, for example, power in a different manner, right? So this is all for today. I'm gonna pick up what I just left next time, okay? And next time, we meet next time, we will talk more about foreign policy analysis scholarship, but the main focus will be given on critical theory in relation to international relations. And as far as I'm concerned, next week Hedges 형원 진솔 맞아요? Hedges 형원 진솔 맞아? Will give a presentation about critical theory of international relations.